Hello, my name is Kevin Hubbard. I am the Acting Federal Aviation Administration's Regional Administrator for the Alaskan region. Thank you for joining us at this informal airspace meeting to consider the proposed changes to Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport's Class C airspace. Anchorage is a crucial hub for aviation with a major international and cargo airport, a busy general aviation airport, the busiest seaplane base in the world, and 2 military airfields. These airports provide many services that connect Anchorage and the United States to the world, while the 2 military airfields are strategic assets important to our national defense. As many of you are intimately familiar, aviation is the lifeblood of economic activity in our home state, employing thousands of Alaskans, generating hundreds of millions in annual revenue, and providing crucial life-sustaining services to our communities across the state. Each of these airports has a dedicated airspace that is under the watchful eyes of highly skilled air traffic controllers and support staff. At this meeting, we will learn how Anchorage airspace operates today and review the proposed changes for aircraft flying in and around Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport. As a joint sponsor and cooperating partner in this action, I'd like to introduce Colonel Charles Shell Shuck, Commander of the 3rd Wing Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, to talk about the Air Force's role in the region.
Hello, citizens of Alaska and fellow aviators. I'm Colonel Charles Shell Shuck, Commander of the 3rd Wing, Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, and an F-22 pilot at JBER. The 3rd Wing at JBER is vital to the defense of the nation and the security of the Indo-Pacific region. Our mission is to provide air dominance, global mobility, and command and control for combatant commanders, ensuring the United States can project power and respond effectively to crisis around the world. We achieve this through a diverse array of aircraft and highly trained personnel ready to deploy at a moment's notice. JBER's infrastructure is a critical component of our ability to execute this mission. We are currently in the process of extending the existing north-south runway from 7,500 feet to 10,000 feet. This project has been a monumental undertaking, requiring the movement of approximately 12 million cubic yards of material, literally moving a mountain to improve our infrastructure. This extension is not merely a matter of convenience. It's a necessity for improved safety for both military and civilian aircraft in the Anchorage Bowl, increased efficiency for our fighter aircraft executing daily training missions, and increased capacity to support the demand for air power operations worldwide. Completing this runway extension is an investment in our ability to respond to crisis in the Indo-Pacific and the safety of all who fly in and out of Anchorage. We're confident that the FAA's proposal through the ATAPS process meets those objectives, and we stand by their recommendations. We at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson are committed to being good neighbors, fair and safe operators in this busy airspace, and responsible stewards of the environment. We do this simultaneously while ensuring we are ready to defend our nation and support our allies. The 3rd Wing remains dedicated to its mission, its people, and the safety and security of the United States. Thank you for your time, and see you in the air.
Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport, or ANC, is a commercial service airport that also serves as the 4th busiest cargo airport in the world. Commercial and air cargo operations account for about 280,000 takeoffs and landings per year. The Associated Airport Traffic Control Tower and Terminal Radar Approach Control Facility, or TRACON, operate 24 hours per day, 7 days per week within Class C airspace, also referred to as Class Charlie. The airspace serving ANC covers an area some 20 miles wide, with altitude limits varying from the surface to 4,100 feet. The Airport Traffic Control Tower and TRACON are located at ANC and provide air traffic services to 5 towered airports. The Anchorage area experiences a robust mix of aircraft, including scheduled air carrier, air taxi, cargo, corporate, military, and general aviation aircraft. The Anchorage Class C airspace abuts Class D airspaces at Lake Hood, Merrill Field, Elmendorf Air Force Base, and Bryant Army Airfield. Aircraft operating to and from Lake Hood and Merrill Field often transition over the Knik Arm, operating under special flight rules established in Title 14 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 93, Subpart D. Aircraft arriving and departing Elmendorf transition through the Anchorage, Lake Hood, and Merrill segments. Numerous aircraft operations occur within this area by non-participating VFR aircraft. A non-participating VFR aircraft is an aircraft that has not been radar identified, whose altitude has not been verified, and who is not receiving traffic advisories or alerts. VFR refers to aircraft being flown under visual flight rules, where pilots are not always required to communicate with air traffic control. The Class C surface area surrounding Anchorage International Airport extends outward from the airport 5 nautical miles from the surface to 4,100 feet mean sea level, or MSL, with the exception of the airspace south of the airport, which has a floor of 600 feet MSL. Beyond that, the Class C extends from 5 nautical miles to 10 nautical miles, from various altitudes to 4,100 feet MSL. MSL is the average height above the world's oceans and is used to calculate an aircraft's true altitude or elevation. Why are we proposing this change? Elmendorf Air Force Base is lengthening its north-south runway at JBER and moving most of its day-to-day operations from the east-west runway to this new extended north-south runway. Construction on the extension of the north-south runway began in 2018 with the goal of providing greater efficiency and improved combat readiness to the Air Force units at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson. Integrating this new runway and facilitating additional military capability without adversely affecting access to surrounding airports was the major goal of the proposal. Additionally, the proposed airspace will provide greater separation between aircraft and reduce the occurrence of traffic avoidance alerts when non-participating aircraft come in close proximity to participating aircraft while on final approach to Anchorage and Elmendorf. In addition, this change organizes air traffic flows to and from Lake Hood and Merrill Field more efficiently. Here we will look at an example of the conflicts we are attempting to resolve safely and efficiently. In this example, Linden Air Cargo 405, a C-130, was inbound to Anchorage International Airport. While on downwind to runway 15 at 5,000 feet, Linden 405 was vectored by air traffic control away from non-participating VFR traffic maneuvering to their north, also at 5,000 feet. Linden 405 received several traffic advisories and a traffic alert from Anchorage TRACON as the non-participating traffic turned into their path. Linden 405 then had to respond to a resolution advisory and climbed to 5,300 feet to avoid a collision. The non-participating VFR aircraft continued maneuvering to the south and east, descending to 3,500 feet to cross the runway 15 final approach course. Air traffic control then had to provide delay vectors to ACE Air 933 off the arrival path to avoid another proximity event with the same non-participating aircraft before they could join final. This example highlights the loose flight of non-participating aircraft in close proximity to IFR aircraft landing at Anchorage. Since 2019, there have been over 100 mandatory occurrence reports for aircraft responding to resolution advisories, dozens of near-mid-air collision and hazardous air traffic reports, and numerous tales from aviators received at runway safety meetings about the close proximity of aircraft operating in the Anchorage Bowl. The FAA is proposing these enhancements to improve overall safety, efficiently control the significant increase in regional traffic volume, incorporate advancements in flight technology, and accommodate air traffic flow changes caused by the extension Elmendorf runway 17. The current Class C airspace no longer meets the needs of the flying public and must be revised. Next, we will learn about the proposed Class C airspace overall and each segment.
Welcome to the FAA's Anchorage Class Charlie informal airspace meeting. We're glad you could join us for this virtual event. I'm Brian Oakes, the FAA's moderator for today's meeting. Our proposal is to modify the Anchorage Class Charlie, amend Part 93, Subpart D of Title 14 of the Code of Federal Regulations, and modify adjacent Class Delta surface areas. The purpose of this meeting is to gather additional information to be considered while developing the proposal. These meetings provide interested parties with an opportunity to present views, recommendations, and comments on the proposal. This design incorporates the extended runway at Elmendorf Air Force Base while merging novel traffic flows between aircraft operating in the Anchorage Class Charlie and adjacent Class Delta surface areas. As a result, the proposed modification will increase safety and reduce the risk of conflicts between aircraft. Our meeting continues with the FAA's detailed presentation of the proposed Anchorage Class Charlie. After our description, public presentations from attendees who registered to speak in advance will be heard. We will then open a live question and answer session where attendees can submit written questions. At the completion of the question and answer session and closing remarks, our meeting will adjourn. For those who are joining us live, your microphones will be muted and cameras turned off. To submit a question during the Q&A, click on the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, then enter your written question into the pop-up window. If you're having technical issues submitting a question, please text our technical support team at 949-478-0253. This phone number is for text messaging only. The FAA is soliciting additional comments on this proposal via the Federal Register. You can submit comments by email or mail to the addresses shown on the screen. Comments must be received no later than Friday, October 24th, 2025. You can also visit our webpage, available through the QR code. Next, you will hear an overview of the proposal from our local air traffic controllers.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Beal, Operations Supervisor at Anchorage Air Traffic Control Tower. Over the next few slides, I'll provide a basic overview of Anchorage International and adjacent airports. Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport is a commercial service airport located in the south central area of Alaska. The airport is the fourth busiest cargo airport in the world and serves nearly 3 million commercial passengers. Next to Anchorage is Lake Hood Seaplane Base, which is the busiest seaplane base in the world, with 72,000 yearly operations. The runways at Anchorage were built to align with the prevailing wind direction in the area. To operate safely, aircraft typically take off and land into the wind. You will see numbers on the runway, and those numbers indicate the compass heading the direction of the aircraft as it lands or takes off. Parallel runways are distinguished from each other by the designation L for left or R for right. Anchorage is equipped with two parallel runways designated runway 7 left or 25 right and runway 7 right or 25 left. There is a third runway designated runway 1533 that is north of the parallel runways. The selection of the runway in use is managed by FAA Air Traffic Control and is dependent on wind direction and other operational factors. There are two typical operational flows in the Anchorage Bowl, runway 733 operations and runway 1525 operations. Within 10 nautical miles, abbreviated as NM, of Anchorage International Airport, there are a mix of general aviation and military airports. These are Merrill Field, Lake Hood Seaplane Base, Elmendorf Air Force Base, and Bryant Army Airfield. Restricted Area 2203 is located northeast of Elmendorf Air Force Base, and the Anchorage Terminal Area is additionally subject to Part 93, Title 14 of the Code of Federal Regulations, also called Special Air Traffic Rules. The primary purpose of the air traffic control system is to prevent a collision involving aircraft operating in the system. We do this through the application of ATC standards in controlled airspace. Controlled airspace includes classes A, B, C, D, and E. In controlled airspace, air traffic control services are provided to participating aircraft. Aircraft must also comply with Part 93 special air traffic rules where established. In Class Charlie, aircraft must be equipped with a two-way radio and must establish communications with ATC prior to entering. A transponder with altitude reporting capability and ADS-B out is required to operate in and above Class Charlie. In Class Delta, aircraft must be equipped with a two-way radio and must establish communications with ATC prior to entering. Separation minima are less in Class Delta airspace, with ATC providing traffic advisories, sequencing instructions, and runway separation to VFR aircraft. Pilots are expected to see and avoid traffic that is operating around them, and there is no ADS-B out or Mode C requirement. Part 93 Special Air Traffic Rules allow aircraft to transition airspace segments in a prescribed fashion. Established in Anchorage in 1963 to prevent collisions between military and civilian aviators, the Special Air Traffic Rules are lengthy. These rules can be reviewed in the Federal Register, Anchorage Terminal Area Chart, and the Alaska Chart Supplement.
Hello, my name is Clark Wolverton, and I am the support manager for Anchorage TRACON. The following slides will present graphics depicting the current Anchorage airspace and the FAA proposal. The FAA has conducted an extensive study, and the following graphics reflect the detailed work done to design the proposed airspace. This graphic shows the current terminal airspace chart for Anchorage International, depicting the Class C with a solid garnet line. The blue dashed lines show Class D airspace boundaries at Merrill Field, Lake Hood Seaplane Base, Elmendorf Air Force Base, and Bryant Army Airfield. The floor of the airspace is determined by regulation, beginning at ground level, shown as surface or SFC, close to the airport, and rising to 600 feet and to 1,400 feet above mean sea level or MSL, farther from the airport. The current Class C overlies one major airport, Anchorage International, and is adjacent to Lake Hood Seaplane Base and Merrill Field. Northeast of Merrill Field is Elmendorf Air Force Base and Bryant Army Airfield. These adjacent Class D service areas begin at the surface and have ceilings of 3,000 feet MSL for Elmendorf and 2,900 feet MSL for Bryant. In January of 2025, as part of the Class C modification process, the Alaska Department of Transportation facilitated the establishment of the Anchorage Class C Ad Hoc Committee, where the FAA explained the proposed airspace. The Ad Hoc Committee was comprised of local airspace users to provide input and recommendations on the proposed Class C. After receiving the Ad Hoc Committee's recommendations and reviewing the committee's final report, the FAA modified the Class C proposal. The modified proposal considers the Ad Hoc Committee's recommendations while still addressing the need to enhance the safety surrounding the existing Anchorage terminal area. Each area will be individually reviewed in the upcoming slides. This graphic shows the proposed Class C airspace. The proposal is divided into 13 areas designated by the letters A through M. Altitudes covered by these areas range from the surface to 4,100 feet MSL. The lettered areas provide for separation services for participating aircraft and are adjacent to amended Part 93 airspace. This shows the FAA proposal with the Part 93 segments, Elmendorf Class D, and Restricted Area 2203. While the Class C and Part 93 segments are proposed to be modified, R 2203 remains unchanged.
Hello, my name is Aaron Novak, and I'm an Anchorage TRACON Air Traffic Control Staff Support Specialist. We will now review each area, starting with the proposed surface area of the Class Charlie. This is Area A. The floor of the airspace begins at the surface, extending upwards to 4,100 feet, and the western and southern borders remain the same. While to the east, the area extends to Lake Otis Parkway. To the north-northwest, the boundary is extended to protect the runway 15 final approach course. This graphic shows Area B. This area is the primary entry and exit point for aircraft flying to and from Merrill Field and Lake Hood Seaplane Base. Area B provides separation from aircraft operating on runway 6 at Elmendorf and replaces existing Part 93 special air traffic rules. The airspace floor will be 1,400 feet MSL, and the ceiling will be 4,100 feet MSL. Area C, shown here, will provide consistent airspace ceiling of 4,100 feet over Merrill Field and Lake Hood. Area C will allow ATC to separate aircraft transiting above Lake Hood and Merrill class deltas. This graphic depicts Area D with a floor of 1,200 feet MSL and a ceiling of 4,100 feet MSL. Area D would normally be established to the surface as a part of the Anchorage surface area. Consideration for non-participating aircraft was incorporated into the updated proposal at the ad hoc committee's recommendation, and the floor was raised to 1,200 feet MSL. Area D allows ATC to provide necessary flight information to aircraft arriving runways 25 right, runway 25 left, or departing runway 7 right and runway 7 left at Anchorage International. Aircraft transiting to and from Lake Hood or Merrill will be required to contact ATC while operating in this area. Area E, normally a part of the inner 5 nautical mile surface area, has a floor of 600 feet MSL with a ceiling of 4,100 feet MSL. This area is shelved to allow access to Campbell Lake Seaplane Base and Flying Crown Airport without contacting ATC. Area F extends south from 5 nautical miles to 10 nautical miles. The floor of Area F would start at 1,400 feet MSL with a ceiling of 4,100 feet MSL. This area provides controlled terminal airspace for Anchorage departures and arrivals. Area G is located to the west of Anchorage Airport and extends from 5 nautical miles to 10 nautical miles. Traffic within Area G overflies the Fire Island Wind Farm and transits the ILS final approach course for Anchorage runway 7 right and runway 7 left. This airspace will extend from a floor of 700 feet MSL to a ceiling of 4,100 feet MSL. This airspace will extend from a floor of 700 feet MSL to a ceiling of 4,100 feet MSL. Area H is new and extends the Class Charlie to the west of Area G, encompassing the final approach courses for runway 7 right and runway 7 left. This area will provide traffic advisory and separation services between participating VFR aircraft and Anchorage arrivals and departures. Airspace in this area extends from a floor of 1,400 feet MSL to a ceiling of 4,100 feet MSL. Area I is an existing area. This airspace extends from a floor of 1,400 feet MSL to a ceiling of 4,100 feet MSL. Area J modifies the floor of the current Class Charlie. This area will provide traffic advisory service for participating and equipped VFR aircraft operating near Anchorage, Lake Hood, Merrill, and Elmendorf Air Force Base. It protects the Anchorage runway 15 and runway 33 corridor. The floor of this segment is 1,000 feet MSL, incorporating a recommendation made by the ad hoc committee, and extends to a ceiling of 4,100 feet MSL. Area K is new and extends the Class Charlie to the north of Area J, encompassing the final approach course and departure corridor for runway 15 and runway 33. This area will also provide traffic advisories and flight information to VFR aircraft that are operating in the vicinity of aircraft using runway 15. Area K extends from a floor of 2,000 feet MSL to a ceiling of 4,100 feet MSL. Area L will provide traffic advisory service for participating and equipped VFR aircraft operating in close proximity to IFR traffic at Anchorage, Merrill Field, and Elmendorf Air Force Base. Area L will allow for deconfliction between military and civilian aircraft. It will facilitate the use of Merrill Field approach and departure procedures, which include new area navigation RNAV and RNAV Alpha instrument procedures. Area L airspace extends from a floor of 1,400 feet MSL to a ceiling of 4,100 feet MSL. Area M is a new area that will overlay the Elmendorf class Delta. This area will provide traffic advisory service for aircraft transiting over Elmendorf. This airspace extends from a floor of 3,000 feet MSL to a ceiling of 4,100 feet MSL. Next, we will preview the amended Part 93 Special Air Traffic Rules. As recommended by the Ad Hoc Committee, the new Lake Otis segment shown here, will allow VFR aircraft transiting east of Anchorage to navigate under arrival and departure traffic at Anchorage International. It aligns with Lake Otis Parkway to give pilots a visual reference. This segment extends from the surface to 1,199 feet MSL. The Goose Bay segment, located above the Goose Bay Airport, Z40, protects transiting VFR aircraft from Elmendorf, arrival and departure traffic. Extending from 1,900 feet to 6,000 feet MSL, this segment requires that aircraft utilize an operating transponder with Mode S and two-way radio, more commonly known as squawking and talking. This segment is intended to provide advisory service to VFR and military traffic, while allowing non-participating aircraft to navigate around this airspace. The Valley segment is specifically intended to provide traffic advisory service to aircraft operating in the vicinity of concentrated military activities at Elmendorf Air Force Base. Extending from 2,500 feet MSL to 6,000 feet MSL, this segment requires that aircraft utilize an operating transponder with Mode S and two-way radio, squawking and talking again. It will provide advisory service to VFR aircraft operating near fighters and heavyweight turbulence generators, while allowing non-participating aircraft to navigate around this airspace.
Now that we have reviewed the various areas in the proposal, we want to show you how it all goes together. Anchorage serves the broadest range of aircraft, from the most advanced military fighter jets to the most basic piston aircraft. This Class C serves to organize and manage this diverse flow of traffic while balancing the need for access by all aviation users. The next two slides show the proposed operational flows in the Anchorage Bowl. The flows are referred to by the primary runways in use at Anchorage International: runway 7 and 33 flow, and runway 15 and 25 flow. These flows will provide enhanced separation between military and civilian operations. The first flow we'll look at is runway 7 and 33. In this flow, aircraft predominantly land from the west on runway 7 right and 7 left, and depart to the north from runway 33. Smaller aircraft may also depart to the southwest from runway 7 left. Aircraft operations at Merrill Field and Lake Hood will generally remain the same. Merrill IFR traffic will transition between Anchorage and Elmendorf operations. In a 1525 flow, aircraft will typically depart runway 15 and runway 25 left, while traffic will primarily arrive to runway 15 and runway 25 right. In all configurations, Elmendorf will predominantly use runway 17 for arrivals and runway 24 for departures. Traffic, weather conditions, and other factors may require the use of runway 6 and runway 35. The next few slides will show real traffic conflicts between participating aircraft and non-participating VFR aircraft. Here, Giant 551 Heavy, a Boeing 747, was cleared for the approach to Anchorage runway 15. A non-participating VFR aircraft was flying northwestbound at the bottom of the Class C at 1,400 feet, then climbed to 1,800 feet, entering the Class C from below. A traffic advisory was issued to Giant 551 Heavy. The approach clearance was canceled, and control instructions were issued to reestablish separation. Giant 551 Heavy was able to see the traffic, reported it in sight, but still climbed to 2,200 feet after receiving a collision alert. In this situation, Stingray 1506 was cleared for the approach to Anchorage runway 7 left. A non-participating VFR float plane was flying in the vicinity. Air traffic control issued a traffic advisory to Stingray 1506 as they were descending along the approach. Air traffic control then issued a traffic alert, canceled Stingray's approach clearance, and the aircraft began rapid descent after receiving a collision alert. In example 3, Giant 8872 Heavy, a Boeing 747, was cleared for the approach to Elmendorf runway 6. A participating VFR aircraft was southbound over Point McKenzie. The VFR aircraft was instructed by ATC to maintain visual separation with the heavy jet, which the VFR aircraft had previously reported in sight. Even though the VFR had Giant in sight, they turned towards the heavy, and Giant 8872 received a collision alert in the flight deck, requiring a climb to avoid the VFR aircraft.
Hello again. I'll be discussing the FAA's rulemaking and environmental review process next. Any changes to the Class Charlie must go through the rulemaking process. Rulemaking is the process federal agencies use to make new regulations. Any proposed rule goes through numerous reviews, and the public has the opportunity to comment. The FAA is required to review and consider every comment. Once the agency has read and considered all comments, it decides whether to go ahead with the final rule. The agency may adopt a final rule that is identical or similar to the initial proposal, or it might make changes based on the comments. As shown on the slide, this informal airspace meeting is an integral part of the process that comes before the notice of proposed rulemaking. Before any changes can be made, the proposed rule must also go through an environmental review, which is required by the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. NEPA requires that the agency evaluate environmental, social, and economic effects of the proposed action. The graphic on this slide depicts the FAA's general process for all projects. It is not specific to this project, but it will be applied. We're about to begin the live Q&A session. Here's a summary of the next steps in the process. Comments must be received no later than October 24th, 2025. The FAA will consolidate and consider all comments. The FAA will incorporate relevant safety modifications. Once the notice of proposed rulemaking has been published in the Federal Register, there will be a separate 60-day comment period. We encourage you to submit your written comments. You may do so by addressing them to the FAA via mail or via email to the addresses shown on the screen. Please again, submit your comments no later than October 24th, 2025. You can also visit our website by scanning the QR code. Today's meeting is being recorded and will be available on FAA's YouTube channel for future viewing. All right, Alaska, we are live. If you're just joining us, I'm Brian Oakes, and I will be the moderator for tonight's informal airspace meetings. I'd like to cover 3 procedural items before we start the Q&A. First, if you're having technical issues, you can text our tech support number anytime during the meeting at 949-478-0253. Second, this portion will last for approximately 60 minutes. We have 2 meetings scheduled, so you can also attend tomorrow's from 1 to 3 p.m. local. Third, we are live streaming on FAA's YouTube channel. The recording will be posted on our website after the meeting concludes. Before we begin answering live questions submitted by the audience, we will first allow time for each attendee to speak who registered to do so. We will read the attendee's name, then unmute their microphone in the Zoom webinar. You may speak for up to 3 minutes, after which we will move on to the next speaker. Any instance of improper language will result in immediately being placed back on mute for the remainder of the webinar. Tonight, we have 8 speakers and 1 presentation. It appears we have 5 online. I will call you in alphabetical order. Chris Hodel, you have 3 minutes to speak.
I'm doing the unmute there. Did it not work?
Yes, sir. I hear you loud and clear.
Okay. It appears there's 2 separate and somewhat unrelated motivations for this change. Obviously, JBear's new 1634, which we understand the necessity of accommodating some airspace changes for that. Seems it can be done without as many significant alterations to Class Charlie that are depicted here. The other is, safety issues with respect to Class Charlie changes from Merrill Field, Lake Hood, and Anchorage International. I've been flying out of Merrill for 47 years. Incredibly complex airspace, works extraordinarily well 99.9% of the time. And to make these changes for so few deviations seems to be overreach when education would probably be better a starting point. My concern with some of the Class Charlie pushing a limited amount of traffic down and in, as in area J and K and somewhat in area L, really forces people to be more concentrated. Most people that fly out of this airspace know where they should be. The traffic going in and out of Anchorage International is quite predictable. And so we know to avoid. I'd hate to see such significant changes be made in light of so few deviations. And my third point is very few people that I know of that fly out of Lake Hood and Merrill are even aware of these proposed changes. And so I'm concerned that all the constituencies that are affected have not been represented well at the prior meetings. That's the end of my comment for the moment.
Thank you, sir. We will reset the clock. The second presenter is Eric Massey.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Is there a way for me to screen share my presentation?
There is not, sir. The requirement for presentations themselves needed to be submitted as stated on the Federal Register entry. So we're going to have to make do with your audio, sir.
All right, I'm calling in to discuss Sky Harbor Airport, which is a airstrip on the lower hillside, and it's going to be affected by the proposed Lake Otis segment. The Seward Highway segment, which I understand the Lake Otis segment is going to replace, currently has an allowance for our approaches to the south. The new proposal basically cuts off that approach. You would have to fly into the special air traffic rules airspace and coordinate with air traffic control, and at the same time talk on the traffic advisory frequency to make a safe approach to runway 16. You'd have less than 1/8 of a mile from the threshold to remain outside the SATR airspace in the new proposal. There's several reasons why I believe that's a bad idea, and I think we should respect something that more closely resembles the prior footprint of the Seward Highway segment. The Seward Highway segment, as it's currently drawn, only extends south to Abbott Road, not to O'Malley, in that part of it that is east of Lake Otis. Basically, that gives us a half-mile notch to make a safe final approach into our south runway without being forced to talk to air traffic control. Here's the reasons why I think it wouldn't be a great idea for us to have to talk to air traffic control. We usually only use runway 16 when it's windy for noise abatement reasons. If there's calm wind or even up to a 10-knot tailwind, we'll land to the north so that we don't have to fly over noise-sensitive neighborhoods. With the proposed airspace, for us to avoid talking to air traffic control, we would have to fly over those noise-sensitive noise-sensitive neighborhoods to make that approach unless we talk to air traffic control. Furthermore, I have a hard time believing it's justifiable to increase air traffic control's workload by that amount by having us make a brief and short radio call to them, have to establish a squawk code, and then at the same time cause the pilots to have to be juggling two frequencies while they're turning base to a windy approach and to a runway, by the way, that also has significant obstacles and noise-sensitive areas. I just don't think that's a good idea. And the way the airspace was designed with the Seward Highway segment originally was a good idea. It accommodated approaches to that runway at this airport very well. The Lake Otis segment does not, but it could easily be accommodated to do so, and I ask that the FAA please look at doing that.
Thank you for the comments, sir. We will reset the clock. The third presenter is Michael Schoder.
Yes, can you hear me? Michael Skoder. been flying out of Merrill Field for 53 years. I was also on the Municipal Airport Advisory Commission for 12 years. And my concern with this airspace is primarily the Area J changes. When the runway extension of the north-south runway at Anchorage International and then the resultant ILS that came in, we were really concerned with the health, welfare, and safety of non-participating aircraft underneath that busiest airspace in Alaska from Point McKenzie. And when I look at this new plan with the floor changes between Area I at 1400 and Area L at 1400, which the current Class C has, westbound traffic, and there's a lot of non-participating aircraft. Myself personally got ADSB in and out in a Super Cub when it came out. I've got onboard synthetic vision. I participate, but there's a lot of air taxis coming out of Lake Hood, traffic out of Merrill. When you have aircraft that have to descend and others are climbing, transitioning in and out of that Area J, that's putting aircraft in a visibility problem that is different. You get unfamiliar aircraft that come in and they say, well, my safest spot's going to be underneath that 1,000. It's just going to really concentrate all of those non-participating aircraft in an area. And it's really working well. We reached a compromise with the extension and the ILS by having the current approach at 3.2 degrees coming in. Those instrument aircraft landing on 1.5 or departing out of 3.3 at Anchorage International could stay on their slope. And as a previous or first speaker said, we all know where they were, even if they don't have equipment in their aircraft that allow them to see them real time. So I'm really concerned, especially if we have lower weather, lots of instances where there's fog over Merrill coming in, have to holding for specials out there. 1,000 feet is really low to concentrate that traffic. So I'd urge you to change Area J to a consistent floor of 1,400 feet. Thank you for comments and making this presentation today.
Thank you for your comments, sir. We'll reset the clock. The fourth presenter is Marshall Severson.
Hey, thank you very much.
You muted, Marshall.
Sorry about that. Am I able to be heard now?
Loud and clear, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Brian. My name is Marshall Severson. I was a representative for the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation to the ATAPS committee, which was quite a monumental foundational task for getting to where we are today. So it's much appreciated to Brian and the committee co-chairs, Alec Moss and Adam White, as well as Troy LaRue from State Aviation. The purpose of the paper that put together here was because at the time, and probably not the same factor right now, unless we revert back to eventually a limitation below 600 feet of Part 93. But what I wanted to speak on in the next couple of minutes is essentially the aspect of how much risk there is and how much safety is compromised by heading without a deviation below 600 feet for non-equipped aircraft in particular over Knik Arm. And essentially, I took a look at the accident statistics for about the last 30 years. There was 85 records that identified 9 accidents pertinent to Knik Arm operations, ditchings, that sort of thing. And most of them were not ditchings, but there was a couple, one of them in 2004, 1.6 nautical miles south of North Shore of Turnagain, our Knik Arm, getting a special VFR clearance. The aircraft lost control due to spatial disorientation and fog and low ceiling, and there was 1 fatality. There's a few more like that, but there's not very many over the past 30 years of below 600 feet. Essentially, The graphic there shows what it's 3 miles across Connect Arm from Merrill Field to Point McKenzie area, and utilizing a 120 mile per hour aircraft estimate. Beyond gliding distance is about 6,840 feet on either side at 120 miles per hour. And what that equates to is 39 seconds exposure over the water beyond gliding distance to the north or south shore. So with operating with ADS-B equipped aircraft and with potentially a deviation or without a deviation, but with the new proposed altitudes, it would be a safer operation than what we have today. Although it is minor as far as the crossing exposure, it is a factor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll reset the clock. Our fifth and final presenter for tonight is Mr. Adam White. Floor is yours, Adam. If you're speaking, sir, we cannot hear you.
How about now?
Yes, sir, loud and clear. Can we go ahead and reset the clock, please, for Mr. White? Thanks.
Thank you for that. Yeah, Adam White, Alaska Airmen's Association, as Marshall mentioned, was one of the co-chairs of the ad hoc committee. I just want to start out by thanking the FAA for their engagement in that process. Just for the benefit of the public that was not involved with that process, the FAA went way above and beyond with our request, getting us information and data so that we could review their initial proposal and then come back to them with some modifications, which thankfully they have adopted for the most part, those things. And so just, I know there's been a lot of questions and concerns that the public had about not being involved in that process, but there's this process for a reason, and now is the time for the public to be involved. So I'm encouraged to see the participation so far and look forward to that continuing tomorrow with the second meeting and then moving forward before the October 24 deadline. Just two things that I wanted to ask for clarification on. It appears that Area Bravo, Area B, and Area L, Lima, have the same altitude structure, and that's part of our comments that'll be followed in writing, asking that those two areas be reevaluated and possibly merged into one unified area. And then tonight, when Aaron was going through his segment of the presentation of the Valley and Goose Bay Part 93 areas, I thought I heard him mention Mode S was a requirement as far as a transponder, and thought that initially it was a Mode C, and just wanted to see if I misheard that, or if that in fact is what the proposal is for the Valley and Goose Bay Part 93 areas. So beyond that, again, appreciate the FAA's work on this project. This has not been an easy task, and it's very difficult to accommodate all the users of the airspace. And I think you guys have done an awesome job in getting to where we are now, and I look forward to what the final result and product will be after the public's comments have been evaluated. So thank you, and I'll surrender the rest of my time.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it. And we will address those as the backroom filters through those questions. So appreciate your comments. All right, that concludes our registered speakers for tonight. Next, we're going to move into our live Q&A based on the questions we're receiving from Zoom and FAA's social media platforms. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce our panelists, Mr. Clark Wolverton, Support Manager, Anchorage TRACON, and Mr. Aaron Novak, Staff Support Specialist, Anchorage TRACON. Thanks for joining us, gentlemen. We'll jump in and get started. Question 1. Aaron and Clark, at the beginning of the meeting, we looked at a lot of information about the airspace segments and how they'll change. Can you tell me a little more about the ad hoc process and how you came to decide on this proposed airspace?
Thanks, Brian, for the question, and thank you everyone for being here tonight for this informal airspace meeting. So to start, the ad hoc committee. To kind of go back farther than that, this all started with a collaborative work group with internal FAA, with members from Anchorage TRACON, Anchorage Tower, Anchorage Center, Merrill Field, Merrill Tower. There on the air traffic side, in which we saw in the earlier slides the initial FAA proposal. That proposal, as you can see on the screen there on the left, was what the initial collaborative work group had proposed to the ad hoc. And as you can see on the right, that is the agency's proposal that you see here tonight that came out of the ad hoc's recommendation. So ad hoc is a part of a much larger process that took years to get to this point where we are today, and even to the ad hoc meetings. As has already been mentioned, and with Adam White speaking as a co-chair, the ad hoc committee included commercial, private, military, airport representatives from the local area. So it was a really large swath of kind of covering the large collective of who is represented in there. And then in June 2025, the ATAP's ad hoc committee made its recommendations to the FAA, and then the agency took those recommendations, and then that's where you have the revised proposal that we see there today to include those Class Charlie and Part 93 segments. And I'll kick it over to Clark.
Thanks, Aaron. I was not much involved in the ad hoc portion of this process. I will say, in answer to the how we came to decide on the proposed airspace, that our effort has been to protect non-participating aircraft from the common IFR corridors in the bowl here. That's been our focus.
Yeah, exactly. And as Adam kind of mentioned the process, and as we've talked about, the non-participating was a heavy focal point of the ad hoc conversations, and it was taking very very much into action with the floors, and then kind of balancing it between where the non-participating aircraft want to fly outside of Class Charlie. Obviously, if you're participating aircraft, not a whole lot's going to change. And I know we'll get into it a little bit more later, talking about those new Part 93 segments and how that was a compromise versus having that as Class Charlie airspace with the Part 93 that we see here today.
Thanks, gentlemen. When small aircraft fly over Kinnick Arm at less than 1,000 feet AGL, they can't make it across if they have an engine out, requiring the aircraft to glide. What's being done to mitigate this crossing for emergency situations for non-equipped aircraft?
That's a great question, Brian. I'll take that one. Overall, safety to the flying public is paramount. That is our kind of North Star for here with our work at the FAA. As I previously mentioned, the ad hoc committee discussed the Kinnick Arm crossing at length. It was the course of a number of meetings. I was there with Brian and Marty Berry, one of our contract support members for ATAPS. And the Kinnick Arm was was discussed extensively with non-participating aircraft. So it's acknowledged by all, and has already been mentioned at this meeting, that the Point McKenzie area is a very congested airspace, with aircraft departing out of Merrill, Lake Hood, and even international VFR all going northbound. And then the occasional Elmendorf traffic that departs out and heads towards that Point No Name, Point McKenzie's way. So it's a balance of balance of services to all users, and the base altitude of the Class Charlie over that area in question has been adjusted with our current proposal to 1,400 feet of the Class Charlie. So non-participating aircraft will be talking to Merrill Tower, Lake Hood Tower, and then they will go underneath the Class Charlie below 1,399 feet, and then they will go northbound underneath the Charlie, whether it's north or west, and then go below 1,000 if they want to go due west in that area J.
So comparing that to today, Aaron, it's Class Delta there. Just confirm it's going to be Class Delta underneath of that shelf surface to 1399, as well as even with a deviation in today's environment, as soon as you hit that North Shore, you have to be below 1,400 today. And so in effect, other than the Part 93 assigned altitude, there is no difference in the altitudes that are allowed to be flown.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If you were to have a deviation, or if Part 93 wasn't there and say present day, like Brian's mentioning, no real change. You can go out below 1,400 feet, non-equipped, and you go underneath the Charlie just as you would today.
Excellent. All right, moving on. Getting from Ship Creek to Point McKenzie can't be done going under the Class C airspace. How is this being mitigated for non-equipped aircraft?
Really, Aaron answered the question in light of the proposed initial floor of that area B was 600 feet, and it's been at the due to the comments of the ad hoc committee and their proposed changes, it's been raised to 1,400 feet for the floor, and so that's the mitigation to allow someone to cross there with less stress.
And in conjunction with that, I know it's a separate piece of the pie, but Aaron, can you speak to the VFR transition routes that the task force is working on? Because that's very important to how aircraft are going to, non-equipped and equipped, are going to cross that area and not compress everyone into the same area.
Yeah, no, yeah, I will definitely touch on that for you, Brian. So kind of concurrently, right now we Josh Coleman, the air traffic manager of Anchorage TRACON, has kicked off a VFR task force with local user groups, all the local air traffic facilities to include the military. We have FSDO representatives as well who are there, and we're analyzing the VFR transition routes. We're going to build those, look at the current salmon book routings that we know, and see how that integrates or not into the current proposed ATAPS airspace. So we're currently working through that, and we'll be building new routes, new places to fly. You'll have various items that will be new on TAC charts once these routes get shown and published out there. But yeah, we're going to be really working really hard with that task force of kind of more organizing VFR aircraft flying, whether it's through the Charlie or kind of suggested routes that should be flown underneath the Charlie, because we know obviously if you're in non-participating airspace as a non-participant, not required to follow the air traffic routes there if you're not talking to air traffic, but we highly recommend that you would so you're kind of segregated away from traffic lane in Anchorage more so, or other VFR traffic that's compliant with the routes.
Very well, thank you. So I'll caveat this next question. It's geared toward the United States Air Force. We did have them answer it, but we're going to relay this answer for them. Why does the Air Force need a longer runway in the first place?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Brian. It's a good question, and as you had mentioned from what the Air Force had told us, so has to do with the couple main pillars of enhanced operational readiness and resilience. The extended runway provides increased operational flexibility, mitigating the limitations of the previous shorter runway. This ensures continuous operational capability, critical for rapid response. It also touches on improved safety. The extended runway allows for safer takeoffs and landings, particularly for larger aircraft in its challenging weather conditions. Increased capacity, that's a big one, especially on the air traffic side with moving airplanes. New procedures are being built and developed from the ground up, both at Anchorage International and Elmendorf. So we're kind of building these both together in unison with the new Class Charlie proposed airspace. And it's going to increase the operational throughput at Elmendorf. The demand for air power projection from JPAIR is only going to continue to grow, and the extended runway will allow the Air Force to support a wider range of aircraft and more frequent deployments, ensuring they can meet their commitments to national security. So to expand on that from the air traffic standpoint, to relay in case the public isn't aware, with this new extended runway, the Elmendorf will primarily land runway 17 and depart runway 24. With the new procedures were being built, they'll have increased readiness. The fighters, as being a primarily fighter base here, they do a lot of their daily training out in the ranges up to the north. So they have the opportunity to come straight in, and a couple more minutes out in the range multiplied over the year is exponential increased training time for them. So that's a big driver of that runway as well.
Thank you, sir. So just a reminder here, we have just under an hour left of our scheduled Zoom. If you have a question, please submit it in the Zoom Q&A or utilize the YouTube chat. We are monitoring both and we'll field those questions. So with that, what are the specific operational differences between the Class Charlie and Part 93 in the proposed Anchorage airspaces?
Thanks, Brian. So with this one specifically, the differences compared to today's airspace are minor. The expanded areas of the Class Charlie will only require two-way communication in places that it currently does not with expanding that Class Charlie. The equipping of ADSB is the same as the regulation that's been in place since January 1 of 2020. Part 93 will require an operational transponder in Mode C, Mode Charlie, and two-way radio communications. These Part 93 rules will not require ADSB to be equipped to operate. So to expand on that, those new Valley and Goose Bay segments, being Part 93, they'll require 91.215 with communication requirements with air traffic, and that Mode Charlie requirement to have a transponder to be squawking and talking. Compare that to the Lake Otis segment proposal. That just will require communications with air traffic. So it will not require a squawk, only just a talk, similar to what the Seward segment language is.
Yeah, that's great clarification, and one less requirement for those northern Part 93s over our original proposal of Class Charlie, reducing that from 91.225 ADSB out requirement to 91.215, similar to the rule prior to 2020.
Exactly, and that extended Elmendorf final to the north, that is that Valley and Goose Bay, it was proposed to be Class Charlie, but with working through the ad hoc process and the various recommendations, kind of a nice compromise there of not requiring ADSB to be operating in those areas. Plus, you have to have ADSB to be above Class Charlie up to 10,000 feet.
Absolutely, that's a good difference. Can you express who was on the ad hoc committee? I don't feel like they captured our issues. I'll go ahead and take this process question, Aaron. The FAA, as Aaron spoke earlier, they created an initial design, and with that design, we then reached out to the Alaska Department of Transportation to convene the Anchorage Class Charlie Ad Hoc Committee. The Alaska DOT, in collaboration with several industry leaders, produced a cross-section of the flying public, as well as airport operators, users with various equipage levels, commercial, industry, air taxis, DOD, and they all got together. The FAA introduced the proposal, went through just like we did on the initial of here, gave the reasonings for the various segments, and then turned the meeting back over to the DOT, where they elected a chairperson, co-chairs in this case, and Mr. Alex Moss and Adam White ran the meetings, set up the meetings, had the agendas, and worked through those segments and provided input back to the FAA, requests per se for additional info, KML files, track data, altitudes of aircraft, numbers of equipped aircraft, to be able to evaluate and see where the interactions are, where the hotspots were, and where they could make proposals to basically raise floors and allow more access for the unequipped aircraft. Miss anything there, Aaron?
Nope, you covered it well.
Why are there so many areas to the Class C proposal?
Clark, you're muted there. Oh,
Clark, you're still muted.
How's that?
Yes, sir.
loud and clear.
So the reason there's so many, by comparison, so many areas in the proposed Class C is to be more accommodating to non-equipped aircraft. If you look at it from the close to the airports out, the floors of the airspace need to be lower, the closer you are to the airport. And if you want to raise those floors as you go away from the airport, which is what we tried to do, then you're going to need more segments. And that's the reason that there are more.
Aaron, anything to add?
No, I think the only thing to add there is kind of as Clark mentioned, as we propose to have that Class Charlie airspace go out for more protection around the aircraft landing Anchorage on the instrument procedures, whether it be the 7s at Anchorage with this new area H hotel or the area K. It just requires more segments the farther you go out when you're shelving it and such.
Absolutely. Why is what you are showing now different than what you originally proposed?
Yeah, it's a thoughtful question there. So the FAA proposal was modified after receiving feedback from the participants of the ad hoc committee, addressed their concerns by modifying the original proposal. So as we kind of talked about, the collaborative work group for the agency made their proposal. It went to ad hoc, and we spent close to 6 months there, as Brian had mentioned, with the agency being there as the presenting and then answering all the questions the ad hoc had. And they went through it very well, very detailed, going through each segment, looking at the non-participants, the various floors, how the new instrument flight procedures are going to interact into this new Class Charlie. Because as we kind of saw in the video as well, traffic for Anchorage, yes, we know they need to land on 7, they need to land on 1-5, et cetera. Via those instrument approaches, the arrivals are slightly changing, different RMP approaches. So there are some modifications of where aircraft are going to be flying in the future, are not exactly the same as they are today. So as a result, the initial proposal, all the changes, and now this revision you see here today takes all that into account to try to look at it from a very holistic standpoint.
Thanks, Aaron. Does the proposed Part 93 Valley segment impact training and practice for VFR use of the RNAV4 approach into Wasilla? Pause. The initial approach fixed waypoint AVER and the 4-mile hold are published at 2,500 to 6,000 MSL.
So the answer is no. We don't expect it to have an additional impact to flight training. Controllers will still provide flight following to, excuse me, the pilots that are doing practice approaches into Big Lake and Wasilla. So we don't expect it to have an impact.
Just for some clarity, that was on our instrument flight procedures list to look at and modify that holding. And I believe that is taking place in conjunction with. Is that correct, Aaron?
Yes, I believe it is on our list to try to amend that to accommodate kind of as the question had alluded to. So that is a work in progress item as well, to not have, say, people who don't want to participate to maybe go underneath or change some altitude. So we are looking at that. And we'll kind of see how that effect is. But yes, if you want to participate, talk to air traffic, especially I expect no change.
Could you please clarify the transponder requirements for the Goose Bay and Valley segments? Will the proposal require Mode C or Mode S in these segments?
Part 93 is going to require Mode C, not Mode S.
Thank you. So that was just a misspeak earlier there, Adam. It is Mode C for the 2 northern Part 93 proposed segments, and no equipage, just communications for the Lake Otis segment. Will civilian traffic still be allowed to do practice ILS into Elmendorf, and what runway is preferred?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. I know today we accommodate those practice approaches into Elmendorf runway 6 with that north-south being closed right now. But yes, practice approaches will still be allowed by civilian aircraft based upon traffic volume and demand of what Elmendorf has going on. But yes, they will be allowed, and it'll be to the preferred runway or the runway in use. So if Elmendorf's landing runway 17, similar as you do today, you'll be able to do a practice instrument approach, ILS, RNAV, There will be a PAR for runway 17 as well with this new runway and such. So yes.
Thank you, sir. As more airspace is placed under positive control, doesn't that compress non-participating VFR aircraft into a smaller area outside, and I'll throw in beneath the Class Charlie?
Yeah, Brian, thanks. That's a great question. Very insightful in that regard. So to answer the question straight up, yes. I mean, it does compress. If you are expanding the Class Charlie with lower floors, yes, it does have the potential to compress those aircraft at a lower altitude. Additionally to that, the aircraft that are best equipped are best served. Equipping and participating aircraft will have a wide freedom of flight similar to today. So if you're equipped, transponder, Mode C, ADS-B, talking air traffic, you really can expect no changes to how you fly today as how you will fly in the future with this new airspace. In collaboration with input from the industry groups on the ad hoc committee, there are still options for those who do not wish to participate. They'll be able to circumnavigate the area. If you want to go north, as we talked about, you'll be able to go out north, not participating below the Charlie at 1,399 feet. You can go north. As has been discussed, if you want to go west area J, the floor will be 1,000, so you have the ability to go below 900 to go west. Or you go a little bit farther north, and you could go under K all the way up to just under 2,000 feet. So that's kind of the big takeaway there is you'll still be able to fly in the areas you want to fly, maybe some slightly changes in the altitude, but if you're equipped, you'll be the best served, and that will kind of proceed as that.
Thanks. Just to add on, that's part of the goal of the VFR Transition Route Task Force, right? Creating those VFR transition routes in around Class Delta and Class Charlie that will include separation from those that are equipped, can fly at certain altitudes, also inside or above Class Charlie. So all aircraft are not being compressed down into the same area. And further, just to reemphasize, over the CNIC, those unequipped aircraft are not being compressed, as you currently can't proceed north of the North Shore above 1,400 feet today. And because it's Class Charlie and the requirement for needing ADS-B out. Will there be any changes to aircraft operating in and out of Sand Lake?
Well, Brian, you mentioned the VFR task force, and they are also working on procedures into and out of the area that would include Sand Lake to improve the flow of aircraft through the Anchorage Bowl. And so there may be changes coming, but they will be done by this task force and improve efficiency and safety, both.
And if I add on to that, with Sand Lake being inside the area A and under Anchorage Towers, Class Charlie surface area, similar, if not exactly the same as you have, where you'll have to call Anchorage Tower for clearance in order to operate there in the Charlie, and then how you proceed out north, south, et cetera, will kind of tie right into the task force of where exactly the routing will go at that time.
So the requirement for those aircraft will continue to be ADS-B out equipped, as they are in the inner circle surface to 4,100 as soon as they're airborne.
Yep, exactly.
What are the purposes of the Valley and Goose Bay segments?
It's a very relevant question, as with those Part 93 Valley segments. So as you can see on the slide here, up to the north, I'll touch on the Valley and Goose Bay first. So the runway 17 final will go out far to the north. We'll have new approaches that will include a high ILS approach that'll be at higher altitudes that will go from that 6,000 to 2,500. As I previously mentioned, the original proposal was Class Charlie airspace up there. So ultimately, the Valley and Goose Bay segments was a compromise that came out of ad hoc and their recommendations, where you're not required to have ADS-B to operate in or above those Part 93 segments. And just to clarify again, and I apologize for the misspeak during the video, that the mode Charlie with transponder and just communication requirements with Anchorage approach to operate in those areas. Going down to the Part 93 Lake Otis segment, all that's going to require is communications with air traffic, whether it be Merrill, Anchorage International, Lake Hood, or Anchorage Approach, very similar to how the Seward segment operates today. And that's also another kind of compromise down there, where in the original proposals, the Charlie in that area D, for example, went to the surface. So instead of having Class Charlie there with the ADS-B requirements, the Part 93 will allow those non-participating aircraft to go into the new Lake Hood Delta airspace that's being expanded to the east.
Thanks, Aaron. Just to add on for the northern sections, Valley and Goose Bay, right? There's a lot of VFR aircraft that transition that area, basically southeast to southwest to northeast, or reverse, or across the water going from east to west. We have Goose Bay practice area in that area. And so raising the floors to accommodate some airspace above the traffic pattern there without having to equip being below. But it's really, we wanted to avoid moving the problem from runway 6 with a lot of VFR traffic traversing underneath of our Elmendorf traffic and having conflicts there, having the same problem up north. And so we wanted some airspace to be able to see and talk to those aircraft to issue traffic for those high fast maneuvers that are coming in, now moving the majority of traffic inbound to the land south at Elmendorf, and not have those close proximity events between small aircraft and our fast movers and heavies that are inbound to Elmendorf. So that's ultimately the reason for controlled airspace.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, for that elaboration. And yeah, I'll just kind of double down on that with the new high ILS approach that's going to come in from the north, from the MOAs. They're going to be the fighters, our F-22 based aircraft, and any additional fighter aircraft that we have visiting for exercises and such. They'll be coming in that valley segment, sometimes from the top of it, enter in from the top there at 6,000 if they're high on those high ILSs. And they're fast movers. Some of them are stealth airplanes, flights of 2, flights of 4, et cetera, coming in. So safety is very much paramount there. So if you're talking with Anchorage TRACON in that area, they're going to keep you safe and separated from that 1-7 final. So that's why those segments are very crucial. But they don't require the ADS-B requirements. So you could just have a transponder with mode C altitude communications, and they'll be good to go and operate in those areas.
Great clarity. What happens to Merrill's airspace when a heavy aircraft goes missed approach on Elmendorf's north-south runway?
Thanks, Brian. Another great question. So with Merrill, we know the missed approaches for Elmendorf are going to be going through the Merrill Class Delta airspace as those mists go south. So we are currently actively working ATC procedures and letter of agreements with Anchorage TRACON, Merrill Tower, Elmendorf Tower, even Anchorage Tower, because the proximity of the airplanes will definitely affect Anchorage International as well. But they're being developed between the facilities to account for this interaction in accordance with our FAA Order 7110.65. Additionally, to kind of clarify, as I to state, so runway 17 will be the predominant arrival runway, but also runway 6 precision approaches will be used, because there'll be times that runway's closed for construction, there could be snow removal, maybe something happens to the runway if disabled aircraft, and we'll have to switch to 6. So we are currently actively working on those procedures of how the 17 mist will interact with Merrill Field.
Thanks. Very similar to use of the CAR-T airspace. So we'll have something very similar to that manner for today's environment when aircraft have to land to the north, and we give up a little bit of airspace in Merrill for the aircraft to proceed on downwind, turn base, and land to the north. So everything's being taken into consideration there.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, it's I guess to kind of clarify when an aircraft goes missed. So if an aircraft's going
missed, if it's an instrument approach, Anchorage TRACON is required to protect for the missed approach in that flight path and altitude as well. So some sort of coordination will occur between Elmendorf, Merrill, Anchorage TRACON to make sure the Merrill aircraft are not in a position if that aircraft at Elmendorf does go missed. We are working through our letters of agreements to say maximize more visual approaches, which don't require a protecting for a missed approach. So that's kind of another compromise of working through all of this as well. Granted, there could be instances where even if an aircraft's on a visual approach and they do have to go missed for whatever reason, a moose runs across the runway, we'll work through that with various procedures and protocol to ensure the safety of these airports of their interdependencies.
In some of those scenarios, correct me if I'm wrong, but with the fast movers, they go missed on a visual, they're going to most likely stay in the Elmendorf pattern and not even have to traverse Merrill's airspace.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Very high probability of staying in the pattern. The fighter missed is a high climb out that goes left to the east of R2203 and goes to the north. So that should have a very negligible impact to the aircraft at Merrill if when the fighters go missed. So we're primarily talking about those heavy aircraft that'll predominantly go south-southwest on the missed approach.
Thanks. What visual landmarks can we use to remain clear of Anchorage Class Charlie?
Well, to remain clear of the surface area, there are some pertinent visual landmarks that you'd be able to use if you look at it broadly. An example would be if you stayed north of Point McKenzie Road and west of the Little Susitna River, or on the east side, if you stay east of Elmore Road and out of the Class D footprints for each of the towers, that keeps you out of the surface area for the new Class C. But I mean, VFR GPS is a lot more affordable and commonplace than it has been in the past, and so you will be able to much more precisely enter the points that you need to stay outside of the Class C if that's your goal.
You guys are working on that with VP waypoints, correct?
Yes.
Another process question. When are you planning on starting this change? So our goal for final rule to implement this change and have the airspace in effect is February 18th of 2027. Between now and then, we'll be going through notice to proposed rulemaking, a 60-day public comment, as well as the final rule process that will go into the Federal Register. There's going to be a lot of outreach. Flight Standards is involved with us, Airports Division, FAA Air Traffic, our industry partners. We will be collaborating and moving through teaching the final change to not only our workforce, but the flying public. Can you explain why the new Anchorage Class Charlie pushes traffic east to Lake Otis over a very congested area?
Brian, you bring up a valid concern there with that question. So aircraft today are required to remain east of Lake Otis unless they're talking air traffic because of the Seward segment. There are no significant changes here besides standardizing it with airspace designation as opposed to a special FAR Part 93. Also elaborating on that, we are having new procedures that are coming out of Anchorage. So for example, our standard instrument departure procedures off the sevens, we don't have any RNAV off the sevens. So we've been working diligently to build RNAV departures. They go east, two of them, one goes north, one goes south with various transitions. And those climb rates and such require kind of various capture boxes. So kind of slight push that way as well, but you do have the Part 93 underneath there as well.
Excellent. That was a piece recommendation from the ad hoc to not push aircraft. We had originally proposed down to the surface there so that we we're seeing everyone and talking to everyone for that interaction between arrivals to 2-5 and 7 departures versus traffic in and out of Maryland Lake Hood. So raising that floor, requiring communications, no different than today. However, the cutoff there is Lake Otis instead of Seward segment, but still keeping aircraft from pushing over into the mountains. Will there be a 30-day grace period for violations? So the FAA, as I just spoke to, we intend to conduct multiple outreach meetings to ensure the local fly-in population has a good understanding of the upcoming changes. Flight Standards District Office has a process to contact violators and discuss, educate any issues that arise, no different than they do today. And they would be reaching out through their education process and only moving in another direction on repeat pieces that they would have to take care of. So there's already processes in place, and it's a monumental change, and we've got a great Flight Standards District Office, and they will be a part of all of our outreach and working through there. We suffer primarily from noise from overflights by small propeller-driven airplanes. Will this change where they fly or how high they are?
No, there won't be major changes to where the propeller-driven aircraft are able to fly, so it should not have an effect there.
Because there are reports of near misses or TCAS events, doesn't mean aircraft were close enough to cause a problem.
I'm glad you asked that question, Brian. Thanks for that. So as we pull up kind of this slide here, I'll get to that here in a minute. So TCAS stands for Traffic Collision Avoidance System. So as the question says, just because there are reports of near misses or TCAS events doesn't mean aircraft were close enough to cause a problem. Well, on the air traffic side, with safety being paramount, if we have TCAS incidences, and in essence for us, that causes a safety problem because there was the potential or likelihood if the aircraft were to remain on their present courses, altitudes, you could have a collision, you could have an incident that would occur. So the TCAS events are a statistical indicator of a problem that may manifest into an aircraft collision. So circling back with kind of this project as a whole, it began when the Air Force proposed an extension of the north-south runway at Elmendorf. Because Anchorage International, Elmendorf, Merrill are interdependent airports, the need was identified to evaluate the whole airspace and make the operational safer and more efficient. Just because Elmendorf was extending the runway and the various feasibility studies and such that occurred, the decision was made to have this as a holistic overview of the Class Charlie airspace, new Anchorage, instrument flight procedures, Elmendorf flight procedures, because aircraft in and around the Anchorage terminal area will be flying slightly different flight paths to get to their respective approaches. Your new fighter recoveries coming in from the training areas are going to be different than what they currently are as well, just to kind of maximize how they fly in and out of the airspace. This airspace with the new procedures is intended to utilize new technology that did not exist when our current Class Charlie was originally designed. And this whole process follows our FAA Order 7400.2, where we've evaluated the current and identified risks, proposed an airspace change to make those issues, presented that proposal to local users ad hoc, and then obviously here today to you. And the proposal allows for safe operations while allowing users to fly in around the area with the least amount of impact. So as you can see on the slide here, if you look at Anchorage International ANC there, you have the kind of yellow-orange lines that go east-west, and then you have the yellow lines that go north-south. Those are our 1-5 final landing south, and then our 7 final landing east. The blue tracks are where aircraft are kind of currently flying, and then you can see, or VFR aircraft are flying. And then where the valley and Goose Bay, as kind of Brian touched on earlier, lots of VFR traffic that goes in and out of that whole area as well. So we have extensive statistical data on TCAS events when it comes to aircraft landing 1-5 in Anchorage, VFR aircraft transgressing that area, and then also aircraft landing 6 at Elmendorf in and around the Part 93. So Part 93 doesn't separate airplanes, it just segregates them altitude-wise. And at some of those low areas where the floor there is 600 feet at Merrill, for example, aircraft in Elmendorf can come down to just about 900 feet. You take in some mode C variation, which our air traffic rules allow up to plus or minus 299. And if there's a situation where those aircraft are off respectively 299, you could have aircraft flip-flopped in space. So that kind of is definitely an instance where you could get a TCAS event that could lead to an unfortunate situation.
Thanks, sir. The FAA has been in the news quite a bit lately for staffing issues. Will the controllers be trained adequately to assist pilots?
The answer is yes. We here specifically at Anchorage TRACON are going to start very soon, and we've already had initial discussions about training for our TRACON folks, where we're going to have extensive classroom training, simulator training to get ready for those controllers who are here. And we also have a number of new people who are coming in the door who are in the process of training as well. So it's top of mind. We are well prepared, and our controllers here at the TRACON, Anchorage, Merrill, Elmendorf, et cetera, Bryant, the other air traffic facility here in the Bowl, we'll all be ready, and extensive work will go into that as well. So just we talk about pilot outreach. We're going to have extensive controller kind of training as well to make sure we're all ready for that February 18th of 2027. Anything, Clark, you'd like to add?
We are preparing the maps that we will need to use operationally. We're preparing the letters of agreement as Aaron has talked about. And so all of the procedures and the tools that we use are being produced now. And so that will dovetail into coming up with the training that they're going to need to use the new procedures and the new airspace. So yeah, training is a large part of what we have to do to get ready for this.
And those include simulations, correct? They'll be sitting at a scope with traffic simulated from today's aircraft in the new segments, going on the new flows, actually talking to aircraft, the controllers, training and ghost pilots maneuvering those aircraft to turn them, tower controllers working on their simulators. Can you explain a little bit of that?
Sure, yeah, I'll take that and then pivot over to Clark here. So we have a tower simulator here at Anchorage Tower, TRACON being a co-located building here at International. We have a tower simulator. It's a computer, very high-tech, sophisticated, number of screens that simulate looking out the window. So our Anchorage Tower controllers will be looking at the new arrivals, departures. Merrill Tower will come over and they'll train on the new arrivals coming in and such like that. So we will be ready and make sure they have the opportunity to kind of simulate it. So, Clark?
You covered it pretty well, Aaron.
I know we will be very busy with training because that's myself and Clark kind of when we're not doing ATAPs, we're heavy in the training. So we're going to pivot right into that, make sure all our folks are ready.
Outstanding. We received questions about where people can watch and get data presented at these virtual informal airspace meetings. What are you going to do with the comments the public provides today at this meeting? Another process question. So this is an informal airspace meeting. It's an opportunity to ask subject matter experts questions about the airspace in the Anchorage Bowl, and operations provide the verbal comments. So all comments received during these meetings are collected and addressed. And as we move through the rulemaking process, we have to evaluate those, answer them, and they become part of the official package that goes to the FAA policy up at DC headquarters to work through the legality of the rulemaking process. The video from today and tomorrow is recorded, will be on the official YouTube channel, so you can go back and watch it. which allows 30 days from the last meeting, which is tomorrow. So until October 24th, we will accept additional comments and have to evaluate and address those as it helps us prepare for our notice to propose rulemaking and make any additional changes to the airspace based on what we have received. Why do you feel that the existing Class Charlie and Part 93 would not work under your proposed plan?
So it's a very good question. So the current Part 93, as you can kind of see on coming up on the slide here right now, that is the graphic that we kind of internally use here for our training. And as many of you know, it's all described textually format. It can be very challenging to read and understand, especially if you're not from here and use it every single day. So each segment, Merrill, Lake Hood, International, there's even there's other segments that are pertained to Part 93, but looking at these three specifically, including Elmendorf, can be very confusing. What altitude do I need to be at? 2,000, below 600. As I know lately, there's been a lot of outreach and conversations of even at Merrill, for example, if I'm given a deviation of Part 93, well, the deviation doesn't approve me to go into Class Charlie airspace if I'm not equipped with ADS-B and such. So kind of just a number of compounding effects of very confusing, which increase risks for both the military and the civilian users. And our goal is to increase safety. And as discussed, as you can see on the graphic there with the airplane at Elmendorf, they need to be between 1,500 to 1,700 feet. 1,200 is the floor, 2,000 is the top there at the Lake International. As they start that descent into Merrill, those Elmendorf aircraft can get within about a 300-foot buffer there between the bottom of Charlie. And as I talked about, if there's any mode C variation, that buffer gets obviously a lot lower and such. So it doesn't separate airplanes, it segregates, but we feel as though the proposal will revocate will increase safety going forward.
Thanks, Aaron. Just add on to the confusing part, right? As people have flown there for 40 plus years operating under this current environment, they're very familiar. They understand where aircraft is. The transient aircraft, we've received a lot of comments of how confusing and dangerous it is flying around those areas. And so that did contribute to how we have proposed our new airspaces. How will the FAA be changing the Anchorage airspace, and what will be the impact for non-equipped aircraft?
Good question, Brian. So current airspace was designed and implemented in the 1960s and then amended in the 1990s. An update is needed to accommodate enhancements in navigation, aircraft performance, and aircraft size. We're also accommodating non-equipped, non-participating aircraft, as we talked about up until this point. And the goal is to redesign the Class Charlie airspace to accommodate all users regardless of aircraft performance or capability. So we've discussed there's obviously going to be some impact to the non-equipped with those floors, but through the ad hoc process, extensive conversation with the user groups has occurred of kind of following that balance and compromise in regards to the new Anchorage Elmendorf route structure. So taking what we currently have and putting in the extended north-south runway, new procedures obviously doesn't fit well into the current Class Charlie. But this new revised Class Charlie, it all flows together very well from a holistic standpoint.
Outstanding. Just another pitch, utilizing YouTube and the Zoom Q&A link, you can submit questions. We just have a few questions left that have been submitted. And if we received any others, we will be pulling the plug here shortly and ending the space. We've got 18 minutes remaining. So if you have any burning questions, please submit them. Please explain more about what the ad hoc committee looked at during this process.
Well, the ad hoc committee included representatives from the flying public, numerous representatives, they took into account the initial proposal by the FAA for the change to the Class Charlie airspace. They considered the effect that that would have on non-equipped aircraft, and they then issued a report on what they found, and then we modified the proposal based on those recommendations. And the design of it is for, as we've said many times, to increase safety between the IFR traffic that is flying in and out of the bowl and the non-participating aircraft, and that's who they were concerned with also. And I'm sure
Yeah,
Aaron,
they really asked us a lot of detailed questions and requested a lot of track data. We uploaded those into KMZ files so that they could look at the various altitudes and where those conflict points were. One of the main points of presentation from the FAA was a VFR traffic depiction, the graphic over a 15-day period in June actually had 10,000 operations in and around the funnel that goes from the north into Maryland Lake Hood. So they really wanted to evaluate how that impacted and what those floors could be. Really drove them to the recommendation to allow for non-equipped up to the current altitude today of the 1,400 feet getting to the North Shore. So there was just a lot of data requested, a lot of equipage data in and around the bowl. How many people are equipped with Mode C? How many are equipped with ADS-B out? What the true impacts would be with our proposal floors to the east of Anchorage down to the surface and over the Knik arm at 600 feet. And so they really took a deep dive into those pieces, understanding the current floor there to the north on 1.5 being 14, but also taking a look at the power line transition in the salmon book, in the chart supplement that shows at or below 600 feet for that. And so that floor as well, we talked about raising, dropping the glide slope to 3 degrees to account for unstable approaches into Anchorage International by the commercial. And so that's really what helped with a commercial, with the cross-pollination of users or on the committee itself, made up of commercial and industry, as well as the various equipped levels of GA, to really go back and forth and talk about the safety elements there and how we can have a safer environment in and around the bowl and not have the amount of proximity events and ultimately not have that the worst case scenario of an accident.
Yeah, as kind of being there, a part of the FAA team there at Ad Hoc, it was very impressive to kind of watch the Ad Hoc process go forth with Adam White, Alex Moss as the co-chairs there. And as Brian mentioned, the level of detail and questions that the Ad Hoc committee asked and request was, I feel like they left kind of no stone unturned and really looked at everything from every aspect. You did have the commercial operators, military present, but majority of the conversation was really derived around the non-participating, non-equipped aircraft of where they're going to be flying, because as we all know, that is a large percentage of aircraft that do fly out of the Anchorage Bowl if you are non-equipped. So it was talked about extensively, and kind of go back to that Valley and Goose Bay segment, like Otis segment, as you see here, were kind of 3 testaments of a good compromise of not having Class Charlie there, because we do acknowledge those ADS-B requirements as well and such.
Circle back to some Part 93. We've answered it multiple times here. Why are we changing any of the Part 93 segments?
they're old and they're not as safe as we could be, and so they needed to be changed.
Concur. And while some people are flying for a long time in and around the Anchorage Bowl, have it down, understand it, believe that there's no issues. there are close proximity events. There's aircraft within 100 feet, right? Very close proximity. There's TCAS RA events. There's near midair collisions that are being reported. And so expanding on that, providing a safer environment for everyone to fly in is just what the agency does. And it's time to evaluate and look at it holistically and make some necessary changes. Another process question I'll take, is this the last opportunity for public comment? It is not. Tomorrow, we also have our second informal airspace meeting from 1 to 3 p.m. local. Comments as required by our policy. It stays in the Federal Register for 30 days post our last informal airspace meeting, which makes October 24th the last opportunity to comment in the informal airspace meeting portion, which is what we're using to help mold our proposal that will go to notice to propose rulemaking, at which time, once it hits the Federal Register for NPRM, there will be another 60-day public comment period. And to add on to that, there will be multiple opportunities during the environmental aspect of this, where there's also opportunity for public comment into the environmental side. Aaron, we'll hit this one more time. Why is Lake Otis segment of the Part 93 needed?
Lake Otis Part 93 needed. It's a good question with all the changes going on. The alternative is Class Charlie airspace. That was the initial FAA proposal there to the surface. So if we kind of segment that and shelf it, Part 93 there, unequipped aircraft can go below, just need to talk to air traffic below that Part 93 or in that Part 93 segment underneath the Class Charlie. As I stated, we're going to have new standard instrument departure procedures, RNAV procedures that will climb off runway 7 right, runway 7 left at Anchorage, go eastbound, and they need certain protected airspace based upon the rules that we have. So kind of why that area D there for the Class Charlie, but through ad hoc and such, the decision and compromise was made to have that Part 93 Lake Otis there as well.
Thanks. That's just a safe environment to exchange traffic so that small aircraft are aware of aircraft departing Anchorage runway 7 left and 7 right, as well as aircraft arriving 25 left and 25 right, with smaller aircraft crossing in front of them, continuing that exchange of traffic so that everyone is aware of who's around and what is going on if you're not with ADSB out. Talking to approach coming into Anchorage, Lake Hood, or Merrill, is communications with the respective tower required before crossing the North Shore into the respectful segment?
Yes. So 14 CFR 91.129 operations in Class D airspace requires the VFR pilots to establish two-way communications with the facility providing services of that airspace prior to entering. So additionally, the AIM clarifies this in more plain language in section 321. The pilot retains this responsibility when receiving ATC radar services. So the answer is yes.
And that includes, if they're not talking to approach control, they need to talk to Lake Hood or Merrill Tower before entering the Class Delta surface area.
That's correct. Yep. Need to be talking to one of the towers before you enter.
Establish two-way radio communication.
Yep. So.
You're right.
Brian, if I may, I know it was mentioned in the earlier videos, and I believe Clark has some of the glide slope math, but the question was that area J of why the floor is at 1,000 versus 1,400. Do you mind if we speak to that with how those 1.5 glide slope altitudes work?
Absolutely. It's a great representation of numbers and shows the reason behind why we're doing certain things. Go ahead, Clark.
Yeah, so part of the reason that we changed the floors out there on the 1.5 final is because we've seen aircraft get close to the underneath the 1,400-foot floor, come close to the surface area on the 1.5 final, and the glide slope elevation where the current glide slope comes into the surface area is 1,430 feet. That's MSL. 1,430 feet above sea level, and you can be below 1,400 feet right there in an aircraft not talking to anybody. And so the idea of heavy 747 flying 30 feet over the top of you, it scares us. I don't see how it wouldn't scare anybody. But anyway, that's, I think, what Aaron is talking about.
Yep, 100%.
All right, final question. We hear the FAA using safety every time they don't want to do something. That feels like something you say when you don't want to do what the pilots want. How does this make us safer?
So I'll start with that one. Traffic has grown over the years here at Anchorage. It's evolved, different aircraft types, different flows, new technologies coming in with different type of approach. So traffic has changed. And really, I think one of the main kind of driving with this is Elmendorf expanding that north-south runway, and to be able to look at things from a holistic standpoint of being preemptive action rather than reactive. So I think this is a really good opportunity for us with this airspace change, Class Charlies, Class Deltas being slightly modified as well. This will allow us to be preemptive rather than reactive, and how this all integrates together.
Clark, anything to add?
Well, something, I mean, I understand the sentiment of not wanting to be told how to do something that you love to do the way you love to do it. And someone in our group has said that this is Anchorage flying, not Alaska flying. And I think that if you look at it like that, this is a very small amount of real estate, if you will, that is we're just trying to make safer by requiring equipage or participation to become part of an organized flow of traffic. And you don't have to do that all through the state of Alaska, but when you get into places where it gets busier more, then it becomes a necessity, and I think that's where we are.
Yeah, I 100% agree that in and out of the Anchorage area, it's been discussed a number of times tonight, definitely in ad hoc is, and in the introductory videos, that we have a number of airports that are all sandwiched right next to each other with various degrees of speeds, aircraft type, equipage, from the fastest, most sophisticated fighter jet to a 747 to the small aircraft, and everyone's kind of all trying to come to the same relative area. So with these new proposed airspace changes, new route structure, the goal is to really enhance that level of safety, that everyone can kind of do what they would like to do. And if you equip, expect very little change in how you operate. Slight modifications to the unequipage, but those have been discussed heavily at the ad hoc process, and we've gotten to the proposal that we are now through all that collaboration and compromise with all the interest groups, and these meetings today with getting your questions and any feedback you have as well, that will continue to be looked at for the comment period.
Thank you, gentlemen. Outstanding panelists for tonight. In attendance, thank you for attending this informal airspace workshop. We will have another informal airspace workshop tomorrow afternoon, 1 to 3 p.m. local time. The FAA, we appreciate your time and comments as we move forward with our airspace modification process. Once again, thank you for attending our Anchorage informal airspace meetings. Have a great night.